You're listening to episode 160, Jodi's story, a premature birth due to HELLP Syndrome. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories, and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here. So it's a good day for a podcast because Serheen is here with me. She has been here one other time and hopefully will be here more times just to help me co-host and just be another sounding board as we talk to other parents who are sharing their story. So if you're meeting Serheen for the first time, lucky you. Now you get to know her. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, I would love to. I'm Serheen Noor Ali. I am a mom of two, and my younger daughter has some medical needs. But based on both of my kids, I have a startup called Sleuth, which is has a vision to be a better WebMD and to replace Dr. Google. And whether your child has something that's going on or you don't, we all need better information to understand our children. And I'm super happy to be here, also because I am a huge fan of child life specialists, as I tell Katie, literally 24/7, because they made me get through my daughter's hospital stay.
And I love Serheen for many reasons. That's the biggest one, though, is that she's a fan of child life. No, just kidding. But last time you came on, you were talking about, like, you also get child life. Like, you get that it's more than blowing bubbles and handing out activities. And you get that You talked once about, like, the child life specialist who told you how an anesthesiologist is around families, and that for you, that was like that light bulb of like, oh, now I can talk to him in this way. And I just really appreciate that.
What's so funny, I saw a scene in a show the other day, and the mother was the patient in a hospital, and they were trying to tell her two sons what was going on with her. And we were watching the show, and my husband's like, they should have a child life specialist with those kids. And I was like, you're so right. Like, oh yeah, of course. And it's so funny because it's like, once you know about it as like a resource and people who just really help you through the hospital system, you're like, every time I see a child, I'm like, no, but there's this great person you can ask for.
Yes, for sure. I was thinking about that. I was watching From Scratch on Netflix. Holy tearjerker. Like, if you were like, you have to prepare yourself for that one. But there was the same thing. There was, I think it was a social worker who came to talk to the family about how to tell the child that death was about to happen. And I was like, man, they need child life there. But the interesting thing about today's podcast guest is Serheen and I were preparing, and she's like, wait, I know her. So how do you know Jodi? How did you guys get connected?
Oh my God. I feel like when you put a radar out there for other medical needs moms or special needs moms, like, you get this like abundance of amazing humans. And we're both based in New York. I think she reached out to me after I put something on LinkedIn, and then we realized we have a common friend. And I saw her at the co-working space where I'm like building Sleuth. Isn't that so funny?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
and like, they both told me about each other. Like, this is just, it happens all the time. Also, like, her daughter's name is the name of my closest friend. Like, how weird is that? And I'm at her house. Like, there's just, these weird connections happen everywhere once you kind of open that radar, I think.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you guys for being here today. And thanks, Serheen, for helping me host this episode. So a couple housekeeping things, because it is Child Life Month. I want you to know that we are giving 20% off Child Life Circle memberships. The Child Life Circle is an online community for certified child life specialists. Come on and get affordable PDUs. You can get 2 PDUs per month for just a very short price, underneath $20. So if you are a certified child life specialist who has been interested in joining the community, when you sign up, use code MARCH for 20% off. And parents, we have free resources for you too. So if you go to childlifeoncall.com/parents, you will see our grandparents guide. You will see our parent starter kit, which teaches you how to talk to your kids about taking medicine and getting shots and all the things that go along with healthcare experiences. How random is it that you know Serheen and this is like kind of all coming together?
I know, it's kind of crazy how it works that way, you know? Serheen, I hope your daughter's doing well. I
Thank
follow
you.
you, and it's, actually, Katie, you had a great post yesterday that it's difficult to be a medical parent. It is. I say to people, you get like a crash course, you get thrown into the deep end without a lifeboat, but I think you said it much better. You become like the expert and a doctor in 5 minutes without even knowing that you needed to go to medical school. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and I didn't come up with those words. Other parents have said that to me, like, this is like a crash course in medical school. And it was so funny. Some of the comments we were getting, like, but I'm not getting the salary. I don't get the days off. You don't get the good parts of that too.
Oh yeah. And unfortunately, if anything, you take too many of the days. So you get almost like penalized probably if you take too many days, right? Depending upon how your employer works.
Yeah, true.
Or if you quit your job, that's a whole other thing. We can get into all
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, what is it? The statistic is something like 40% of special needs moms end up quitting the workforce.
Wow.
I
did
feel
not know that.
so passionate about that topic, right? Because I quit my job to take care of my daughter, as you guys know. And it's also like, you need that money, dude,
Yeah.
badly. You need that money in that moment, and yet you're like making this choice. So anyway,
40% is high. That's a
40% is
lot.
high. But I also wonder how many people don't self. I think there's a lot of hidden parents who are taking care of children that don't even go into identifiers like that, right? And then get into the data. And it would be really interesting for someone to actually correlate like the workforce data that people like Reshma Sojani are doing with what is happening at home with their child.
No, certainly. I think it would be really interesting. I find for myself in trying to gather data for Fllrish is that it is so difficult, especially when it comes to healthcare, to glean that data, right? Like, so much of it is, I would say hidden, but secretive, unless you have passwords or certain software, subscriptions, which are prohibitively costly in order to be able to get that information.
Totally.
Yes. And Serheen is like our healthcare data guru now, which I can't wait. I mean, it's already beginning, like what you're creating and what you're doing. And I just can't wait to watch it flourish. Speaking of flourish.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. I just feel, I feel like I'm my own, I'll say client, so to speak. And Fllrish can grow and evolve and flourish as my journey grows and flourishes. I mean, right now I'm dealing with, my daughter just turned 4, but I have to think ahead for a year and a half from now when she's going to be going to kindergarten, instead of just enjoying the moment of where she is and doing so well. Now I have to make those appointments for her now for September to apply for the following September, when in fact
you're always preparing, right?
Yes. And when in
Planning.
fact she can be a totally different person by then.
Yeah.
Mm.
Can you take us back? Can you start from like the story of
Yeah,
why
I mean,
Fllrish and your
sure.
daughter and your family?
Sure. I say this to people. I had a very easy 28 weeks of pregnancy, and then I had a very difficult 4 days, to the point that I ended up being sick, deadly sick, unbeknownst to myself. My husband was in Europe. He was traveling his last business trip. And again, we weren't expecting her to come so early, so he took that trip, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And fortunately for me, my mom was in town. She came in from Florida to do some baby stuff, look at furniture, look at possible cute outfits, things like that, just to set up a nursery. Though in Judaism, we don't set up anything until the baby is born. Little did my mom nor I know that instead of looking for baby stuff, that I would be admitted to the hospital for 10 days, and that my daughter would be born and stay there for 77 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I had what is called HELLP Syndrome, which is a deadly form of preeclampsia, an extreme form of preeclampsia, and my organs were starting to shut down. I had, in 4 days, I gained 22 pounds of water weight. So prior to that, the Thursday before Jenna was born, I had gained 6.5 pounds total in my pregnancy. And then the day she was born, I had weighed 22 pounds more. And my blood pressure was something like 190 over 150. And my OB calmly and collectively said to me, okay. He's like, we're going to go to the hospital. My sonogram machine isn't working so well. Let's go to the hospital. Let's check it out on their sonogram machine. And I'm thinking we might not leave until the baby is born. And I looked at him very puzzled. And I was like, Dr. Romoff, but the baby's not due for another 3 months. And he said, I can't quite look and figure something out. So let's just go. I'm going to get your mom in here. I'm going to tell her to take you to the hospital, and I'll meet you there. And he was so calm.
Wow. I mean, that's a good thing that he was calm, because he obviously knew something was going on.
Completely. I mean, that's what you would want in a provider, right?
Yeah, you don't hear that very often. That's amazing.
Yeah. And he looked at my mom and he said, so Linda, and spoke very slow and methodically. Linda, we are going to go to the hospital. You're going to go to the labor and delivery floor, and you're going to tell them everything that I just said, that I need to look at their sonogram machine and that I will be there momentarily. So we picked up and went. I walked into the hospital at 1:00. And Jenna was born at 3:16.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I met her 2.5 days later. And there are a few things that I remember just anecdotally. One neonatologist whom I came to love said to me, well, what was your birth plan, Jodi? And I said, my birth plan? I'm taking a hospital tour in 2 weeks, once my husband gets back from Europe. And my mom literally put her hands on my shoulder and said, not this. Right?
Yeah.
Because what difference did it make at that point what the birth plan was?
Yeah.
And then I do remember my OB seeing him in the OR, and he's like, okay, Jodi, he's like, we are just going to give you, some medication. You're going to put you to sleep. We're going to get your baby girl out and everything's going to be great. Okay. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And that Wait, so you went into the doctor's appointment because you had, why did you go that day? Was it like a normal?
Okay, so I went because, I had a series of things aside from the gaining weight. That was a Wednesday. So on Monday night, I kind of stopped eating. My stomach felt really hard. And I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I noticed I was gaining weight, but I thought to myself, well, I'm in the 28th week. I hadn't
Right.
gained weight beforehand, so it's probably just catching up with me. And then on Tuesday, my urine started to turn orange. And I thought maybe it was because I had stopped really drinking and eating again, because I just wasn't feeling well. I felt like I couldn't intake any food, any liquid. And that's when my mother came to town, and she told me I looked horrible. She used other words, but horrible was basically it. And we were supposed to go see To Kill a Mockingbird. And my mom was like, we are not going. And I said, but we have second row seats. And my mom was like, I don't care. We are not going.
Yeah.
And I really wasn't feeling well. And I said to my mom, if I'm still not feeling well by tomorrow morning, I'm going to call Dr. Romoff. Wednesday morning, I started to see double. And that is one of the last signs of like organs shutting down and things like that. So I called my OB's office, and he was either teaching or doing rounds. So they asked if I could come in at 12:30, and I did. I went in, and literally within like minutes, he was just like, okay, like took a look at me, took my blood pressure. And he also saw that my placenta was starting to separate from the wall in the uterus. So, but he didn't tell me that.
You know, your experience is not just thrust into like medical parenthood and having a baby in the NICU. It's thrust into I almost lost my life. And I'm wondering, you said there was 2.5 days until you met your daughter, and that was probably more because you were having to recover than you weren't allowed to go see her. Is that right?
That is correct. I was on magnesium drip that was helping me with my blood pressure. And I was hallucinating from the medication. I didn't recognize my husband's son, my stepson. And I saw clumps of hair floating in the sky like clouds. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was so sick. I couldn't even pump milk at that point either, because the magnesium, they didn't want to give to Jenna. So she had donor milk. And when I finally did see her, I wish I could remember more. I think because I was so sick and so scared, the compounding of all of those feelings and emotions, I don't remember much. I remember my husband asking me if she looked like a Jenna, because that's what we had planned on. Her name was Jenna Faith. Now, Faith has come to mean so much more than what it originally was for. But he asked me if she looked like that. And I'm like, of course she does. I'm like, she's beautiful. And then I just remember crying. And I think it was crying for a whole host of reasons, right? Like thrilled to be able to see her, crying because she was so little, hooked up to tubes and machines, and crying because I didn't even know still what was going on. I was the person that when I stayed in the labor and delivery room until I was in the room that was closest to the NICU. And I was that person when I was walking very slowly to the other room that every other person on the floor knew. I was like patient number one, or whatever you want to call it. I was that case. And I remember looking at my husband and saying, how come everybody's looking at me as if they know me? And staring, and he was just like, oh, because you're so pretty. I'm like, yeah, right.
I have so many memories. I worked in a wonderful NICU here in Austin, and those moms, especially on magnesium, that so badly want to get to the NICU and then have these really complex feelings of like, why doesn't this feel like I thought I should feel when I saw my baby? And I actually don't even want to be here. I want to be in my bed asleep. And then the guilt comes, right? Like, I don't even want to see my baby, and just the complexities of that meeting. And a lot of times I would tell parents, like, your job right now is to rest and recover, and we've got your back here, and when you are ready, we're going to get you here however we can, but you got to take care of you. But it feels so wrong to parents to feel that way.
I remember feeling that way exactly, to the point that I said to my OB, and he came to visit on a Saturday morning. And I was like, why are you even here? It's a Saturday. And he goes, I came to see my number one fan, not you, meaning my daughter.
Mm.
And I said to him, Dr. Romoff, I think I have a problem. And he goes, what? I go, I think there's something wrong. I don't think I asked to see Jenna before I met her yesterday. I don't know. I don't remember. I said, and when I met her, I didn't feel bonded to her. I didn't feel like all of a sudden maternal. I feel, we're told that the maternal instinct goes on like a light switch, or at least that's what we see. That's what we read. But the truth is, even for people who don't give birth preterm, over 20% don't feel instantly bonded to their child. And my OB was like, you do not have postpartum depression. You do not have depression. The fact that you're asking me this means you're already a great mom. It's because you have been through trauma, and you have to process that trauma before you can show up and be there for your child. And in between then and now, you go and visit her, but also the doctors and the nurses who, Katie, I applaud you. You're a different breed of people, angels and true godsends, have your back and are going to take care of her because you can't at this moment. And that's very hard to process as a mom, though I wasn't feeling like a mom, to have someone tell me that it was not in my best interest to be there with her, but to heal myself.
I think there's like all these stories that we face with when it comes to beginning of life, beginning of motherhood, even end of life. I've witnessed a couple of end of life situations, and we think, oh, it looks poetic. And I feel like it's often not poetic. And I wonder where that narrative could open up a little bit. Like, you are more than enough as a mother when your child enters this world, even if it might not be the most poetic, calm situation. And I mean, I remember with my first daughter, you look at movies and you're like, oh, immediately you're supposed to identify as a mother. Like, I felt like her older sister for several months. I was like, oh, I'm just like taking care of this beautiful child, but like, I don't yet feel like a mom. And I just wonder what we could do, what we would need to see to know that there's so many different ways to do this.
I think the thing is that that's not like the glorified version of motherhood that is generally portrayed. That's what I feel. I feel like, you look on Instagram, you look on Facebook, you look on any articles, and they have the most perfect baby pictures. And I don't have that. I mean, my daughter was rushed to the NICU. I don't have those first footprints or anything like that. And I think that's reality. But generally speaking, when you are reading about something, I think people tend to paint a rose-colored picture of everything being picture perfect, no pun intended, when the norm actually is, even if you have the easiest labor and delivery, it's not necessarily the most amazing experience for women.
Yeah.
It's transformative, absolutely, but that doesn't mean that it's equally amazing across the board.
I like that word, transformative, right? Like, it transforms everybody in the room when you're in those situations. But you're right, it's clunky, it's awkward. People say the wrong things don't go right. This is beeping over. Like, it's not. I'm sure there have been amazing and beautiful births and amazing and beautiful deaths, but the majority are this really, really transcendent, transformative experience. And that's probably the words. And to your question, Serheen, like, how do we open up this narrative? I think it's people like you, Serheen, and you, Jodi, coming on to say this and normalizing that, which is really important. I love your doctor. What's his name? Dr. what?
Roma.
Dr. Romoff. When he told you you have to process your own trauma before you can really show up for your child. Gosh, I love that. I'm like feeling that way now about just my life in general. We have to process these things to show up as ourselves. How did you begin to do that while healing and having a baby in the NICU?
I think for me, I did that in terms of, first of all, he allowed me that, right? He gave me permission to feel whatever I was feeling and not to question it. I think that is really important for all moms, not just moms that go through trauma. Hormonally, right? There's so many ups and downs after having given birth. So I think that was the first thing. I'll say secondly, my husband was amazing. I think all too often, myself included, I don't give him enough credit. And I don't necessarily think that husbands in general get enough credit. Because as women, we speak out and we say what's bothering us. But husbands generally don't. He was my rock. He's always been my rock. And he was like, I've got this. I'm going to help with her in the NICU. You focus on you. And he was also a drill sergeant with me, getting me up to walk and pump and all the things that needed to be done. He was amazing. So he helped me. And then also, I'm fortunate enough to have a great family and also a therapist whom at the time came to visit me in the hospital as a friend, and just to help me try and process what was going on. Still to this day, I have not Googled everything that could have gone wrong with me having had HELLP syndrome. That's something I choose to do because it's kind of like self-protected. Because I had Googled one of the particular conditions that my daughter was born with, and it had sent me into a tailspin. And my husband made me promise him not to Google again. And to this day, I still haven't when it comes to anything related to her medically speaking. He'll Google and he'll give me the definitions and things like that he thinks would be beneficial for me. And then I take it from there. But I think having that great support system, and I've been in therapy for years, and I know that working on yourself is a life's work. But if I could somehow process this, and then I didn't have to process it fully, just a little bit, so that I could allow myself to go into the NICU and hold her skin to skin. And once I did that, that's when my maternal feelings came to be. I was so afraid to hold her or to do skin to skin. And again, my husband and the nurses and the doctors in the NICU were like, you've got to do this. This is so wonderful. This is medically necessary for your child. Also medically necessary for me in terms of blood pressure, but I kind of didn't care about me. I was more about her, and I still am. So I think all those things collectively, that's not to say I didn't have difficulties. And like I said earlier, I still do. I think we're always learning, growing, flourishing, and evolving. And all those things happen, especially as our kids grow and have new obstacles and challenges that come before them.
If you could go back to your former self, what do you wish you had known? Both like tactically, but just like
before
transcendently. No, like now that you've been on this journey, like what do you wish you had known either about the syndrome or about yourself that you can go back and say like, yes, you can do it, or I wish I had known this, or what would you want to tell another parent who might be in a similar situation?
I wish a few things. I wish first and foremost that people understand that the NICU, while so scary, is also really magical. It's this place that, you become a member of a club that you didn't know that you ever existed or that you didn't want to become a member of. But those doctors and nurses are angels, and they are so helpful to your baby in terms of telling you about being a parent and what to look for, and to not be so scared. I think people don't understand that. It's very stressful because you're dealing with parents and you're dealing with very small children in a stressful situation. But somehow, whether it's like during a holiday and they dress the whole NICU up, during that holiday or something, their aura just becomes magical. And I think that's important. I also think it's important to know that all children, whether premature or not, have their own growth trajectory, right? So while I've been looking at my daughters under a microscope, others similarly are looking at theirs all the time. Are they rolling over? Are they this? Are they that? And I learned that, not everyone can be in first place, and it's okay. You don't have to be in first place. Mm-hmm. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think as a type A mom and, wanting everything for my daughter when it's supposed to be, I kind of learned that I had to surrender to the process. And I wish I knew that sooner as well. Because you have to give up control. There's no choice. You have to give up control. And I think it's very hard as a mom to do that. And then lastly, what I think it's important is to know that you're not alone. 10% of births each year, babies are born premature. That's over 360,000 babies are born 36 weeks and prior. So there are plenty of us around. And, you just have to find your way and take everything in stride. And, eventually, and my daughter isn't fully caught up yet, but I know she will be. And that's okay on her own timetable.
Serheen, I bet you could speak to that kind of giving up control and timetable too.
I was just, one of the ways that we built Sleuth is to actually really center the child so that we can see that each of our children for what they are, not just, a chart that might or might not be relevant. I'm so taken by what you're saying. In my family, we talk about this a lot. I feel like more liberated, like when you go through something hard with your child when they're young, the norms and the narratives you realize are just optional, really, frankly, and knowing that you can opt in or opt out is kind of great. Like we spend a lot of time at home together on Sundays now. We don't do a lot of activities on Sundays, and that's really liberating. And it's also not always the norm with other people, right? But well, I was talking to a parenting journalist about this. I was like, special needs parents and medical needs parents, I believe, based on the conversations I've had with people like Katie and you and others who know this, like we found this pocket of joy and liberation and freedom that was also a gift. So when you were talking about the NICU as a gift, I really like how you're bringing in this other side of the story that maybe we don't associate it with. And I was like, yeah, I have deeper joy now. I don't know how you feel about that part of the journey. And also tie it to your daughter's name. I think her name is so beautiful.
True.
Thank you. Yeah, I celebrate every little everything. This morning, we made an obstacle course in our house before school, and Jenna can finally jump over something that's big and not fall, right? And something that is so minute or might not even be on the radar to other people is so wonderful to me. It's something that we celebrate because she's been trying really hard for months. So it has given me a reset, to your point, as a gift of what really matters in life, right? And it's celebrating everything, every day, every little everything. I'm convinced that Jenna is a happy kid because we're always cheering her on. She actually now cheers her friends on. It's kind of cute where she's like, "Go, Olivia, go." She cheers her friends on. And to her, that's normal because we are always cheering her on. And that is a gift.
So great.
Certainly, I don't know that I would have appreciated that or appreciated human growth and development and what it takes for babies to and little kids to do things and to learn had this not had happened.
I hear you talking about gifts, and I see a lot of them in you. What has becoming Jenna's mom taught you about yourself that maybe you didn't know before you had gone through this?
I think I always knew I was a strong and resilient person, but I just didn't know how much or how so. And, putting your one foot in front of the other every day to walk into the NICU and check whatever I was feeling at the door and to emanate positivity and loving, warm, amazing feelings was something that I didn't know that I could do. I was, like I said, I was having a hard time. I was feeling broken and confused and alone, despite having had my husband's support. I didn't have any friends who had been through this, so that made it very difficult. But checking whatever my feelings were at the door of the NICU, I didn't know if I could do it, but somehow I just did. And I think it's because I had to. And sometimes I think when you're put in a situation where you have to do something, you just do it. And then it became kind of almost like rote, right? So that every day I would go back and feel the same. And it helped me deal with my feelings as well, because when I sat with her on my chest, I felt like I got to bond with her in ways that most parents don't. And I consider it a bonus that my husband got to sit with her on his chest for 4 to 5 hours a day as well. And most dads don't get to do that either, right? So I have always been a glass half full person, but I was really put to the test at that time, and I still am at times. So I think that really surprised myself about me, being able to be like, Jodi, this isn't about you. It doesn't matter that your blood pressure, I was still crazy with my blood pressure and the medication and everything else. It's not even about that. It's really just about your daughter.
It's like you're describing something really sacred. And I would tell parents this in the NICU too, is, there's no laundry here, no dishes, no to-do list. The only thing here right now is you and your baby and the care team. And it's not always perfect and it's not always feeling that great, but this is what is here right now. And I love how you're framing it that way. Like you check it at the door. That's not easy to do and probably didn't happen every single time, but you practice it, right? And you get good at it.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I'd have literally, I do meditation breaths beforehand and prep myself on my way to the NICU every day, because it wasn't something that came naturally. I don't think people expect to go to the hospital, have a baby, and not come home with their child. That is a very difficult thing. And then to go there every morning, knowing that again, you are going to leave, is very difficult. So I think for me, I had to prepare myself mentally every single day. And there were some days I was better at it than others, right? Some days where I was just too tired, or I just didn't want to, but I did it regardless, right? And I always had the faith that, Jenna would come out the other side a better and stronger person for this, for what had happened to her, and it's such a big part of who she is. And, one day I can't wait to share that story with her, because I think so many elements of her personality are tied up from those first months and then some from, when she was born.
Totally. And is this, at what moment did you start Fllrish? What is the kind of creation behind it and what you're trying to do based on your journey?
So I knew pretty early on that I wanted to do something in, I'll say, the preemie parent space, special needs parent space. But I wasn't sure what that was. And I also wasn't sure about making such a big decision right after having given birth. There was a lot going on. But as I watched Jenna grow and flourish with her therapists, I realized how fortunate I was to curate her team. Not everyone has that luxury. Not everyone even wants to. I'll say maybe some people don't necessarily care. They might think, oh, they'll just catch up eventually. But I knew that there were other moms and dads out there like me, and trying to navigate and parse that system through was very difficult. So I wanted to take what I had learned and what I felt was missing from my journey and create something so that other parents going through a similar journey won't feel so isolated or alone, or not know where to go, where to turn to get support, to even educate themselves onto how to best put their child in a situation to best succeed. To your point, Serheen, before, right? You kind of get to opt in and opt out of things. And even when it comes to education, right? It's just a different way of learning for children. That doesn't make it any worse or any better. I think destigmatizing that is really important to me. And I've noticed that as Jenna's journey has gone on. And that's something I look to have Fllrish touch on more as well, is to destigmatize just different types of learning.
I love that. I think it's so important to consider inclusivity as like everyone comes with different needs. And there's so many people who understand that. And the more people like you that help normalize the fact that like everyone has their unique needs and everyone's journey is worthy and so beautiful and so exciting, I think we'll get there. So I think both Katie and I are so excited about what you're building.
Thank you. And I'm excited about what both of you are building too, right? There's just the more we can spread awareness and normalize what parents go through, what children go through, the better.
Yeah, I totally agree. How can people get in touch with you and follow what you're doing?
So people can get in touch with me. They can follow Fllrish online, www.fllrish.com. They can follow me on Instagram at Fllrish. They can follow me on LinkedIn at Fllrish. Same with Facebook and TikTok, believe it or not.
I love it.
And also email hello@fllrish.com. I also just want to point out that, there are a bunch of resources on Fllrish. I have composed 15 stories, instances. There are 3 to 5 minute stories about what happened to myself or my husband in the NICU. And I picture parents listening to it while they're cradling their kids, doing skin to skin. So there are those audio little stories that I think is very helpful to know that someone has been through it and that you will get through it, wanting to grasp onto that hope. There are also resources broken down state by state, county by county, where people can go to get help, whether it's sensory therapy, PT, OT, ST, where to find early intervention or early start, however their state calls it, state by state. And then there's also a coaching portion where people can talk with me one-on-one or text with me one-on-one for periods of time.
That's amazing. It sounds like a one-stop shop for parents. And I think that's much needed. And the fact that you've been so generous with your time and diligence to do it state by state, when I can only imagine how painstaking that process was, is really valuable. So thank you. And I'll make sure to link all of your stuff so people can find you easily and tag you in everything that we do so people can connect. But I'm just really grateful for your time and your willingness to share. So thank you so much. And thank you to Serheen for helping me chat with Jodi. I love that you guys knew each other ahead of time. That's even more fun.
This was so fun. Thank you both.
Yes, thank you both also. And, if you ever need anything or want me on as a guest again to talk about something, other stuff with respect to special needs, or, it would be my pleasure without a doubt. So thank you. And thank you for all the work you both do.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Child Life On Call podcast. The only reason this podcast keeps on going is because of you and listeners like you. So please join in on the conversation with us on Instagram, Facebook. I'm even on TikTok now, y'all, making a fool of myself. I haven't danced yet, but maybe it's coming. You can find us at Child Life On Call. We also have a website, and that has all of our information about the Child Life Circle, about the Child Life On Call app, and a blog with new information all the time. That's childlifeoncall.com. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for listening to these episodes and being a part of this community. We are so grateful and so honored to be able to provide this for you.